Hey y'all, welcome to project number 4, Wireframes. So it's hard to believe that this is, I think, the second to last milestone that we have for our entire semester together for this class. So I'm excited about the wireframes. Y'all have done a great job in projects number 1 and 2 to get better at wireframing, to refine that. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how y'all take on a new challenge in wireframing a mobile app for project number 4. So what we're going to be doing is, unlike project number 1, where we focused primarily on responsive web design, and when you laid out mobile screens, it was for a mobile website. Project number 2 focused on desktop only. And so now in project number 4, we're focusing on designing for a mobile app. And so the exciting thing about that is there are new patterns, there are new things called gestures that you can take advantage of and be thinking about. And just as a tip to start off, the best way to maybe learn about gestures or to uncover or discover what those might be is to open up your phone and just tap around an app, tap around your favorite app. Maybe it's Airbnb, it's Facebook, if it's any type of financial app or Spotify. Explore all the buttons. Swipe one way, swipe another way, double tap. See what happens whenever you interact with the application, and think about how you might leverage those types of similar gestures into your own design here in our wireframe. So I'm excited about this. I think y'all are going to do a great job, and looking forward to seeing what you do for your mobile apps and bringing those to life. So also, just real quick, another tip is just remember your mood boards that you created just last week. You included some UI inspiration for that. Don't forget about those. As you go into your wireframes, now's a good time to maybe go back to your mood boards and think about what you actually included in there as far as app or UI inspiration, and maybe start to sketch out, some of those things of how you might be able to lay out a similar concept or a similar UI pattern based off of what your app is, what your users are going to want in your app based on your user interviews. So a couple of things that are going to be your best friend: opening up your phone, going into your app, and then also referring back to your mood boards and the UI inspiration that you included there. So let's dive into some examples of what worked well in previous projects, and maybe start there. So I just wanted to take a look, like we have been, as we go into some of these new, some of these repeating deliverables, some of the things that worked well from previous projects. So here I've got an example from Natalie for the Modern Grand Apartments. And what I really enjoyed about this example of this wireframe was the balance. If you look at this, the actual maybe fidelity of the wireframes is not extremely high. You get an understanding of where content's going to be placed, where the actions are, those highlighted links there. But the detail isn't totally there for the wireframe, and that's okay. Wireframes are meant to be a visual kind of language or understanding of structurally and from a layout perspective of how your app might or your site might look and begin to lay out structurally. Now, the great thing that I think helps in Natalie's example here is the detail in which she goes to in the actual annotations. Annotations, like y'all know so far, you're probably tired of me saying it, are the supplemental information that really helps bring a little bit more context to what you're thinking in the actual wireframe itself. And so while the wireframe can be pretty loose and low fidelity and use squiggly lines to indicate text, that's great and that's fine. But those annotations really help give the audience, give the person who's consuming this view the right information to understand what you're going for, what your thoughts are from a design perspective. And so I really like this example. I think it strikes a nice balance of rough wireframes with some great detail in the annotations. And then I really like the highlighted links. It's been really cool to see how y'all have picked up on that from project 1 to project 2, and then we'll see what y'all do in project number 4. But I like the way that the links, the clickable links, are highlighted there. Now, keep in mind, as you design the wireframes for your mobile app, there is no clickable. You don't have a mouse for your mobile app. You have your finger, and so it's tappable. And when you get into the UI, UX space, especially with professionals, That's something that you will constantly be called out on if you make the mistake of saying this is a clickable, portion of the app. There's no such thing. It's a tappable, and so y'all will be indicating tappable areas, tappable actions in your wireframe. So just one example here. Another example is Amanda's Creeks Bend apartment. And I believe these were located in Austin, if memory serves correct. Some of the things that I like about this example is the extra detail. And while in Natalie's example that we just looked at, a little different than what we have here for Amanda's. Here we still have kind of the squiggly lines to indicate, large swaths of text, large bodies of text that maybe right now, she doesn't really know what that's going to be or the content that's going to be there. But we do know the heading, we know it's going to be the about us, and we know this is going to be a gallery and floor plans amenity. And so while the entirety of the structure, the entirety of the content isn't quite there yet, there's still that extra little detail in the navigation and the pre-nav up top, in the different areas that are going to be included in this kind of 3-column layout here with gallery, floor plans, and amenity. And so that's a nice little extra detail there to kind of give a little bit more context and visual clues on the wireframe itself. Also really like the color coordination here. I think it's really cool the way in this wireframe that she has the pre-nav, and that's highlighted in blue, the primary navigation that's highlighted in the highlighter yellow, and then the extra types of contents and features that are going to be available down the page through the hero image, the highlighted gallery, floor plans, amenities, the about us. And I think that leads me to kind of the third thing that I really like about this wireframe is the content hierarchy. Here is kind of a really nice balance of, you have the navigation information up top, really nice hero image section that I believe ended up having a call to action and a click through in there. You have 3 different examples, 3 columns there in gallery, floor plans, amenities, and then about. And so I think it just flowed very nicely. Once you got into the UI itself, it flowed nicely also. And so the content hierarchy is really helpful and nice in this design, this wireframe as well. Now, in these reviews, we're talking about the desktop view itself. And so keep in mind that when you go into a mobile application, the hierarchy is a little bit differently. You're going to have a nice balance of maybe some titles balanced with some calls to action, maybe some brief paragraph or body text, but not typically large swaths of paragraph text inside of mobile applications. Really, you're just trying to give the user enough information to make the right decision to take them to the next page or the next interaction or the next purchase or review or whatever your features might be within your application. And so you'll probably not have as deep or as the depth of content in your mobile applications, which is why we're upping the wireframes a little bit, count to 10 instead of 6 there. So good job, Amanda. And I think this is a good example in those areas: detail, color coordination, and content hierarchy. All right, the last one we have is actually a throwback to project number 1 that Justin submitted for pressed coffee. I thought this was really cool to see out of the gate in project number 1. Even though we were dealing with a mobile website, which is going to be different from the way you think about a mobile app design because of the use of gestures and the different types of features around native interactions like tap and double tap and swipe left, swipe right, swipe up, swipe down, all the different types of things you can do on your phone. The ideas and the things that you can create in your wireframes and your UI are going to be different, and you're going to have a lot more options to play with than you would when we were back in project number 1 for the responsive web design. So I really like that Justin, even back in project number 1, was thinking about the gestures themselves. And so here you've got the example of the finger there swiping, and here in this example in the overlay, and then also down here in the bottom center. And those little extra visual cues as you're laying out your wireframes, again, they're just rough ideas, rough sketches of the layout and the content that are going to be on your site or on your application in this case. But those little extra visual cues of, especially once in the applications themselves, of the interaction state, the swiping state. Is it a swipe? Is it a double tap? Those types of things are really nice to include here in your wireframe, because you begin to think about how the user might experience your design rather than just structurally how it's going to lay out. And so if you start thinking about those things now, that's going to increase your ability to create once you actually get into the prototyping, the design, and then the prototyping itself in InVision. So I really like the gestures here. The injection of color is really cool here. And while in the hand-drawn wireframes, we're not too concerned about color, typically they're grayscale, but I like how Justin just included, this extra touch of brown here. And a couple other colors when you look at the footer there with Pinterest and Instagram and things like that. It's not too much. The big thing to keep in mind is you never want to give the person who's viewing your wireframes the idea that they are the final actual prototype. I've been there where I've presented wireframes that looked a little too realistic or a little too finished. And business partners mistaken it for the actual final prototype. And so, like we've said so far, hand drawn is kind of, at least in my perspective and what I've seen, especially at this stage, is the best way to go. Refining, honing that craft, understanding the layout at this point in your design careers. And then also just knowing that, having the lower fidelity is a good thing and doesn't confuse your end user or a business partner or a client as to which is the actual wireframe versus which is the actual design itself. So I also think it's good use of real estate in this. And this will play out well. This was specifically for responsive web, but it will play out well, that use of real estate, the cards, the boxes, and things like that. Once we get into the application design itself and in the app wireframes that you'll be doing for this project. So 3, I think, good examples, a couple from project 2, and then thinking back to project number 1, what worked well there. All right, let me also just state that, remember that how you present your work matters. And so I really like these examples that were included from project number 1. I think we have Cassidy's, Rose's, Natalie's, and Miracle's here in these examples. And what I love about these is they range in, the different types of things that are included on the actual kind of final submission, but all of them have a cohesive look and feel, give us a description of where we're at, wireframes homepage, desktop wireframes homepage, homepage desktop. Those little extra kind of touches there just really help wrap this package together, especially if you were to hand this off to a client, or long-term putting this on maybe your portfolio website to showcase your work, to showcase all of the things we've been doing for this class as case studies in your UI UX knowledge that you've gained in this semester. So I love these examples. I think as we go into project number 4 and you dig into your wireframes, if you haven't figured out a logo yet, go ahead and spend a few minutes thinking about that. Like I said, I'm not judging you based on the logo itself, but I've seen a lot of great examples and know y'all are going to do great in the logo design class if you haven't had that already. But, especially when it comes to branding and theming, just selecting kind of your brand color palette, your logo and things like that, just kind of give that extra touch, especially here, even at the wireframe stage. So with that, I maybe just wanted to share a few mobile app wireframing tips and tricks. And I just quickly sketched out some ideas that I thought might be helpful to share with y'all, that I would be maybe expecting you to have in your wireframes, that I would be expecting to see in the wireframes themselves. And so this first example is fixed navigation. If you open up pretty much any application that you have on your phone, you're probably going to see a fixed navigation. Now that's likely going to be on the bottom, but you might also have navigation links at the very top. Typically, the bottom navigation is saved for your primary features. And so I think this is the example of Airbnb. And so, searching, favoriting, maybe adding or looking at destinations, inbox, and your profile. It's going to be your primary functions within the application itself. So think about the things that your users mentioned in the interviews as to what would be some of the most important things for them in the application. Think about the genre you chose and take a look at other apps within that genre and what they do for their bottom navigation itself. You can also leverage the IA map that you just created last week. And so the important thing would be, if that's your bottom navigation, it's probably going to be your primary actions within the app itself. Typically, it's anywhere between 3 and 5 icons there at the bottom. It's important to select icons that have kind of global meaning. And so you wouldn't want to pick a random icon that is difficult for somebody to visually understand unless there's maybe some text that accompanies it. And so I think the Airbnb app has the icon plus the text. And so, just know you want to use icons that are common patterns. A search action is represented by the magnifying glass. So you wouldn't want to create a new icon or new instance of that would be unfamiliar to your user. At the very top, you might have some things like settings. You might see kind of the gear icon for settings at the very top. You might also have your profile image at the very top of your application as well. But typically, you're going to probably have, if you open up any app, a fixed nav bar at the very bottom of your application. The cool thing about InVision, as we'll be prototyping there in our final prototype, is you can actually fix the bottom navigation like we did in project number 2 if you fix the top nav itself. So again, a couple of things that I would expect to see in the wireframes, and maybe just talking through it a little bit with y'all, but a fixed navigation, whether the top or most likely the very bottom. Another thing that I would expect to see, or a tip for mobile app wireframing, is the use of boxes and cards. Unlike a desktop design where you have pretty much unlimited real estate, especially compared to a mobile app design. In a mobile app, it's important to maybe think about the content in chunks. Think about the features that you have in chunks and not in kind of large bodies of text or large pieces of content. These boxes can oftentimes, or these cards, drive the user to quick action and quick decisions. And so here I just quickly sketched out an example from NerdWallet. And here it might show, if you're using a financial app, maybe it shows my credit score, my bank account balance, if I have any loans to pay off, and maybe a helpful tip and trick. And so the best way to think about maybe how you could use boxes or cards on your homepage is, again, think about those key features or the key things that would be important to your users based off your interviews. Go back maybe and re-listen to those interviews and kind of try to find those aha moments of excitement, or I would definitely love this app if it included this thing, and look for ways to highlight that on your homepage or dashboard, or on interior pages of your application itself. But typically, if you kind of survey a handful of mobile apps on your phone, you're probably going to see a strong use of boxes and cards in some way, shape, or form. Now, because your real estate is limited from a width perspective on mobile, you're probably only going to have 2 boxes left and right if you choose to kind of do this quad layout like NerdWallet did. So real estate is important, and so use it wisely, and it's limited, but there are different ways to get around that. Boxes and cards are a great use of space when it comes to mobile app wireframing and design. Another thing that I would expect to see in the wireframes is a strong use and balance of imagery and text, especially if you're somebody who chose maybe the entertainment app or the travel app. There's a lot of great examples that I've seen so far in the project number 3 submissions, but then also some of the things that y'all have done on the mood boards themselves, especially, like I said, those of you who have selected a travel application or entertainment app. If you, again, open up any handful of applications on your phone that fit in those genres, you're probably going to see a really strong use of imagery and text. And so it's important to strike that balance, especially in an application for for travel. You want to entice the user to make that decision to go to the destination that they're reviewing within your application. And the best way to do that is to put a beautiful image in there that they can imagine themselves in that space. If you're designing for an entertainment app and you're trying to sell the latest movie or series that's available within your application, finding a screenshot or a still from that set or that movie or that show is going to help entice the user to click in and actually want to watch it. And so look for ways that you can use strong imagery and balance that with text. And here's just an example of Airbnb. If you go into kind of the trips area of Airbnb, there's a large photo, beautiful photo in the background that has kind of the search box over top of it. And then as you swipe down and scroll down the page itself, there's lots of beautiful content and photography that populates. The best way to show those destinations is not through text. It's through the visuals themselves and the imagery itself. The fourth one, as far as mobile app tips go, is the use of tabs and list items. I think this would be especially important if you chose to do the money transferring app, especially if you wanted to see a detailed history of transactions and things like that, or bank statements or something like that. And typically list items would be used in that way to show snippets of detail that maybe you can tap into and see an expanded view with even more detail to provide. And so like we've said before, typically in mobile application design, unless you're doing maybe like a news app or a reading app, you're probably not going to have large bodies of paragraph text. And so, think about how you might be able to use tabs or list items to allow the user to make quick decisions, to maybe tap on something and expand to read more, but not that they have to see all of that to actually make the decision, if that makes sense. If you have Venmo, it's a good example of that. Here's just a really quick sketch or wireframe of Venmo. And so if I go into kind of my profile, I can see my stories and my transactions, and I can tap between the two of those. And so InVision would allow you to do that once we actually get into prototyping. And so perhaps if you chose the money transferring app, or if you did the travel app and you're looking to build an itinerary or lists and things like that, tabs and list items might be a good solution to explore as you go into the wireframes themselves. All right, we have one more example here. And so our final example is around swiping and tapping gestures. And so this is a quick sketch of Spotify. And so if you pull up the Spotify app, you'll notice that the content kind of bleeds off the page a little bit, right? The album artwork bleeds off the page. And so just in a quick sketch of what that looks like, the important thing is to make sure if you're going to use kind of the overflow or include a swipe gesture to expose more content that might be off the page, the important thing is to let the user know that there actually is content that is beyond the screen itself. One of the worst things you could do, let's just say that perhaps here at the very top there were another row of boxes here that the user could interact with off the screen. Well, just in this layout right here, I would never know that because there's nothing to the right of these boxes to indicate that there's more there. And in these examples down here, you would definitely maybe think that there would be more content available because you're kind of seeing the third box kind of creep in from the right itself. And even if you think about the fold line, like we've talked about, especially in desktop design, the fold line is evident in mobile as well. Your screen is only so tall. It's the actual device itself that you have. Although the screen can scroll on forever. And so even in this example at the very bottom, it's important that if your content's going to scroll beyond your navigation, the very bottom of the page, that you at least have a little bit there above that fold, above your navigation, to let the user know that there is more content there and they can explore it and kind of swipe naturally. So in this example of Spotify, like I said, their album artwork kind of bleeds left to right on the screen. But the good thing that they do is actually kind of kind of peek the third option into the screen, into the actual device screen itself, so that the user knows that they can swipe through that content and discover more albums if they want to. As far as tap gestures go, it's another feature that InVision will offer once we get into the prototyping phase. So perhaps you're using an entertainment app or a music app like Spotify, or you're doing a travel app, and you want to favorite a location. You're actually going to be able to build out a screen where you can maybe tap a heart or tap a plus or tap a bookmark icon, and actually maybe change the icon color from an outline to a solid red or something like that. And so tapping gestures and any type of those basic gestures like that are going to be available when we actually go to prototype in InVision. And so it would be important for you to maybe think about how you can use swipe and tap gestures now, even in your wireframes. And so I would encourage you to explore that, and would expect that in your wireframes here for project number 4. All right, let's go over the instructions themselves real quick. Maybe before we do that, actually, in this module, I've actually included a lot of helpful links, at least for me when I was getting started in mobile app design, that just are aggregates of content and pattern and then examples of things that are out there. And so I've included a couple, but maybe I just wanted to jump into one example here for you. So in the links in this module below, you'll see several of them. You'll see UI patterns and things like that. One of my favorites is mobin.design. This is really just a library of content and examples that are available that are really just screenshots of mobile applications. And so let's say maybe you were interested in seeing what Venmo does. Maybe you have a money transferring app. Well, Venmo's not here, but let's maybe see Airbnb. And Airbnb comes up, and here is kind of like the catalog of screenshots for Airbnb. And so I can kind of explore, without having to pull it up on my app or having to kind of interact and navigate with it. I can see pretty much all the screens that are available within Airbnb. And so it's a really cool site, especially if you're looking for just like inspiration and examples on how you might lay out content. The other option to this, which I really like as well, is you can create your own library. So maybe you created a mobile app if you with the name of your app here, and you can start dragging and adding screenshots to or adding examples to that, almost like a kind of a mobile patterns Pinterest board, if that makes sense. Here in the patterns example, let's just say you actually had a map, and so you were looking or wanted to see inspiration ideas for maps. Here's a ton of almost 250 results of examples of UI patterns for maps on mobile applications. And so this is just a tremendous resource, mobin.design, that you can actually go in here, look for inspiration, look for ideas if kind of if you're stuck on something or just need that little extra spark on how you might lay out or how you might design a feature or a portion of your application. Like I said, you can actually create your own libraries, add features, or save some screens and things like that. And so it's a great resource to look for inspiration, to look for ideas, especially as you're getting started. And some of the things we just talked about, you can see evident on here: bottom navigation, strong use of photography, swiping left and right, and content bleeding off the page. So a lot of those things, like we were just talking about, you can find examples in the real world, in the actual apps themselves. And so maybe gives you a little bit more to explore in your wireframes here for project number 4. Let's jump back into then our instructions. And so if you take a look at those links below, hopefully it provides some inspiration, some ideas as you start to draw out your wireframe. So now's your time to grab a pen and paper, and or your iPad if you've been using that, and start sketching. So as you think about how you might lay out your interface or your app concept, recall back, think about the things that your users said would be beneficial to include in your app. Go back and re-listen. That's one of the main reasons why I asked you to record your interviews, so that in these moments when you're sitting down and doing wireframes, you can just recall and listen back to the things that your users thought were important, or revisit your interview summaries. look for those moments of excitement or frustration about apps that they've experienced already, or they might be looking for in your app. And you're going to use all that knowledge that you gain from project number 3 and the work that you've done so far in project number 4 around IA mapping and mood boards, and pour all that information, all that knowledge into architecting out the interface for your app in project number 4 through your hand-drawn wireframes. So like I said, there's a big difference though between the design for responsive web and for mobile apps themselves. And the big thing that is the difference is gestures. And so I would encourage you to open up a couple apps on your phone, experiment with those, and think about how you might leverage those in similar ways for your prototype, for your wireframes themselves. Remember, as you go into your wireframes, we're looking for the structural layout of the visual structure and layout of your design. That's going to be supplemented through some really great annotations. So y'all have done a great job with that so far. I expect no less in project number 4. And those two things together really just help tell a story of what you would be expecting to do in your final design, but just here at the wireframing, kind of the low fidelity stage. So let's go over the requirements and the instructions for this assignment. So again, like your other wireframes have been, you're going to submit a PDF. As far as the number of pages go, I'm shooting for a minimum of 10 screens designed. And those would need to include your primary features. So like you did for your IA map, you might just want to put a little star or indicate that this is where the user would achieve that primary feature that they were looking for. You might have more than 10 screens, and that's fine. A lot of y'all have done some really detailed IA maps. The reason for 10 is we're going to be dealing with a smaller device with a smaller screen, less content with apps and with app screens, mobile app design. And so a 10 is kind of a good number. It'll give anybody who's looking at your prototype, maybe after the fact, or if you use it in your interview, in an interview later on, a good understanding of the app itself. It's tough to do that with maybe 4 or 6 screens, but 10 is a good number to start with. And if you have more than that, that's great. You just want to demonstrate the ability for the user to achieve those features and then also have a really nice, robust application concept when it's all said and done. File name is going to be no different from what we've been doing. project4_wireframes_ your initials. And the UI dimensions we're going to be focusing on an iPhone 10 screen size, which is a 375 pixel width by 1812 pixel tall device type. So if you think about just a tall rectangle for your actual kind of wireframe, your actual UI dimension. Now the fold line for that device, kind of the bottom of that frame, is 1812 pixels tall. What I would expect is that you show the depth of your app if your screen goes below the fold. Show everything to the bottom of your application screen when it ends. But you can showcase the footer, the bottom navigation, and then continue that content below it, showing the entirety of the screen that the user might be interacting with below that fold line. 2 posts that are due for this assignment. No different there. Post number 1 due on Thursday evening at 11:59 p.m. You're going to be sharing your PDF with the group. So begin sketching out some of those layouts that you might explore for your app. The reference, like I said, the user interviews, the mood board inspiration as you begin to sketch. Refine those and include that minimum of 10 screens that include your screens that showcase those 3 key features. Include some great annotations with it, and submit your hand-drawn, readable format, readable package, that PDF, so that your audience understands it. It feels themed, and they can kind of read it, understand it, and get a sense of what you're hoping to do in your final app based on these wireframes. So share that PDF along with 200 to 300 words explaining your thoughts behind your app design, what you're looking to accomplish. If you chose to do any gestures, maybe explain that a little bit also. And your second post is due Sunday evening, 11:59 p.m. It's the second post, like you all know at this point, with a couple weeks to go in the class. That's going to be based on the feedback that you give to your peers. So make sure you're hitting that 200-word minimum. It just helps you think critically and write critically, giving some great critique and feedback along the way. So for each of your classmates within your groups, make sure you provide a review and some feedback. What worked well, what didn't work well, maybe some areas they need to focus on or to fix, and do that for everybody that's a part of your group. So only 2 modules in this class for this week. The industry chat with Emily Stump, YSU graduate, and then also this assignment for the wireframes itself. For this week and next week, I'm reducing the number of modules for each week because I want to make sure that y'all have time to focus on a couple extra screens for wireframes, a couple extra screens and new gestures and prototyping features next week when we actually get into UI design, and give you all time to do that as we finish out the semester here in interactive design. So 2 modules, the industry chat, and then this module due on Thursday evening. All right, so with that, one more time, the wireframes are due Thursday, April 22nd, 11:59 p.m. Your peer feedback due Sunday, April 25th at 11:59 p.m. also. Make sure you get that in on time. No late work accepted results in a 0. Y'all know that at this point as well in the semester. So hopefully this was helpful as an overview. Check out those links below of some helpful articles, some helpful pattern libraries that are out there. If you're stuck or you're trying to think about how you might best solve for this layout or problem, those pattern libraries have saved myself over and over again. I'm sure y'all will find them useful, and looking forward to seeing what y'all do for your hand-drawn wireframes for project number 4 as we look to finish this out and bring your app concepts to life. So y'all have a great evening, and I'll chat with you later. Thanks.